The price of Bitcoin is falling right now. Surprise! In this video, I'll be diving into the technicals, seeing what is happening if we have anything to worry about at the moment. Also looking at what the miners have been doing over the last few days. We also have to talk about Grayscale as the first Grayscale Bitcoin shares unlocks start happening today. And a bit of inflation news at the end. Very important perspective for you, so make sure to stick around for the sweet, sweet inflation news. My name is Lark. Every day I make videos talking about cryptocurrency investing, so if that's a topic that you would like to learn some more about, then make sure that you subscribe to the channel, gently tap on the thumbs up button for the YouTube algorithm, and of course, click on the notification bell to know to put out a new video. Let's go ahead and turn over to the charts. So as you can see, Bitcoin has been trending downwards for the last 3 days, starting on the 12th, which was one day before the Grayscale Bitcoin unlocks, falling yesterday, which is when the Grayscale unlocks started, and of course continuing down today. Now, if we look here at the Bollinger Bands, we've been talking about the old Bollinger Band with quite a while here, talking about potential big volatility coming in. And when I talk about volatility, I talk about volatility, not this kind of baby price action we've seen over the last few days. Bitcoin's down 9% in the last 3 days. That's not a big deal. That's not a big deal because if you look at it perspective-wise here for you, what is actually happening right now for Bitcoin? We are basically seeing Bitcoin continue to just kind of trade sideways within this sort of bigger range area that we've seen Bitcoin trading within over the last really 2 months. Basically, I mean, if you look here, the majority of our price action for 2 months has been between $31,000 and about $38,000. And if we look back really across the last few weeks, the majority of the price action has been between $32,700 and $35,000 approximately. It's incredible how tight the market has been, how sideways the market has been. And yes, that does mean that volatility is coming. You can see we are starting to see a little bit of a swing back up here on the Bollinger Band width. So we could see a more dramatic volatility move coming in. The move that we've seen so far barely moves the radar. We actually need to see something much more substantial. Again, we're still expecting a potentially bigger volatile move coming as a result of these just sideways ranging markets. Markets don't range sideways forever. Eventually, we are going to see the volatility coming in, likely in a pretty gosh darn dramatic way. So let's just throw some moving averages up here real quick, because I want to just take a quick moment here to point out that we have just hit another bearish crossover. So it's worth taking a quick look at. We are still, of course, dramatically under the 200-day moving average, which is the green line on the chart here for you. We have just had a bearish cross, which you can see the market sold off on. So that was a sell-off here for the market on the 12th. So that's the 100-day moving average now crossing under the 200-day moving average. That, of course, adds on to the overall trend that we've seen here with Bitcoin just really continuing to be very lackluster. The market's continuing to be in a rough state of affairs. We had our official death cross back here on the 19th of June, after which point the market has basically been struggling. We haven't even seen Bitcoin come back up to challenge the 50-day simple moving average yet. We had a few times when it got vaguely close, but we have not seen Bitcoin closing above the 50-day moving average for a very, very long time now, not since back in May. Now, for perspective, though, we are only a few $1,000s away from the 50-day moving average, and if we could reclaim that and start to build from there, it would be a nice bullish thing for Bitcoin. But considering we just got another bearish crossover with the 100 and 200-day simple moving averages, not super hot short term here for Bitcoin. By the way, if you want to trade some Bitcoin or some Ethereum or whatever you want, there's lots of great coins over here on Bybit to trade. So this is a futures trading exchange only for experienced traders. but if you are trading futures, it's definitely the best place to be trading futures at. And if you use the link down below in the description to start your account, you can get up to $600 in trading bonuses when trading over on Bybit. Now let's dive into some different on-chain analysis here that you really need to be keeping in mind. First, let's talk about what the Bitcoin miners have been doing. So Bitcoin miners, they're once again in accumulation mode. Now, I think this is a very important thing to point out here, because when miners are in accumulation mode, it means that they are expecting the prices to move higher in the market. Now, that is important because look at the behavior of the miners, right? They sold into strength on the initial run-up for Bitcoin. They slowed down their selling when Bitcoin was, up in this region here, whereas the market was still pretty strong. They could have been selling at that time, but they started accumulating because a lot of miners switched to position. Look, Bitcoin's up to $60,000 at this point. We're going to see this asset moving up in price, and they've largely been accumulating their supply since that time. Now, we did see this anomaly here, which is really, really important to talk about because this is essentially something that we shouldn't expected to be seeing in this chart. So essentially, we saw a big miner distribution happening in the month of June, almost exclusively because of the big sell-off related to all the China FUD, right? These guys all had to sell Bitcoin in order to move to Texas, right? So that's why we saw this happening. But right now we have miners back in accumulation mode. We can see miners are once again stacking up significant amounts of Bitcoin on a daily basis. So they are back into basically the mode that they were in May. So they had that giant sell-off. Miners, for the most part, were just holding on to their Bitcoin. Because again, miners are expecting bigger price movements in the future. Miners tend to be selling into strength. They tend not to sell into weakness, unless, of course, as we had with this situation here, they have their backs against the wall and are forced to sell into weakness. Now let's talk about the Bitcoin balance on exchanges. So this is how much Bitcoin is sitting on exchanges right now. We can see there's obviously a very big run up in the amount of Bitcoin coming into exchanges. The total on exchange balances actually hitting a peak. You can see right here coinciding with the bottom of the first major sell-off of this entire bear trend that we've been seeing in the market recently. So a lot of people panic selling the dip, basically. And what's very interesting is that since that time, we've actually seen people buying and accumulating and removing that Bitcoin from exchanges. So what this essentially was a lot of short-term Bitcoin holders sending their Bitcoin back to exchanges, panic selling their Bitcoin, others stepping in and taking it off of their hands. Serving as a reminder that the cryptocurrency markets, as always, have been a device. Actually, really all markets have been a device for transferring assets from the impatient over to the patient. Now, one thing I've been seeing people commenting on recently is, but Lark, did you see the price of this crypto or of Bitcoin today? How can you possibly still be optimistic? How can you possibly still be bullish? Well, let me explain this to you before I hit you with some potentially bearish news here next, but let me just hit you with this first. First and foremost, I'm an investor. I am an investor in cryptocurrencies primarily. I also invest in gold. I also invest in stocks. I plan on investing in real estate in the not so distant future. But first and foremost, I'm a cryptocurrency investor, and I am an investor, not a day trader. I know we talk about charts here on the channel, but I'm talking about bigger trends that are happening so you can understand kind of what's happening in the market, right? I'm not trying to call out this trade or that trade, not so much into the day trading side of things. And if you're a day trader, more power to you. I hope you're doing really, really well. But I'm an investor. And as an investor, I take the big perspective. I understand and I believe that cryptocurrencies are and will be the biggest and the most important and the fastest growing asset class of this decade. It's 2021. It's 2021, guys. I'm looking forward to what's happening in 2030. How high are these assets going to go by 2030? When you understand that, your perspective on investing in this asset class becomes very, very different. As the saying goes, most people overestimate what they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in 5 years. In crypto, it seems to be everybody overestimates what they can achieve in a day. I'm going to become a billionaire overnight. Let me get into this dog meme coin quick. And of course, they don't think, well, if I just invest in fundamentally sound cryptocurrencies, hold them on a longer time frame, let's say 5 to 10 years, I'm going to become or have a much, much higher degree of certainty of getting rich versus trying to get rich quick, because you often get broke quick. Now, all that being said, let's talk about some potential bearish news, or at least something to keep in mind as an investor moving forward for the next few days. We had our first series of the GBTC, so that's the Grayscale Bitcoin shares being unlocked. First one started today. You can see here, right there, that's our first unlock, 13 July. Coincidence that, of course, the price was going down today. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe there are no coincidences. Something to think about anyway. As I mentioned in my video last week where we broke down the whole Grayscale unlock thing, this shouldn't really affect the price because there's no spot selling going on. The one thing that you could say with some of that institutional demand for Bitcoin, it's going to go away from the spot market and over to the Grayscale shares, because they are trading at a discount right now. So you can actually buy Bitcoin at about 15% discount versus the actual market value of Bitcoin, because the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust shares are currently trading at a discount. So maybe during these unlocks, we'll see less volume potentially happening as these institutional investors prefer to buy the GBTC stocks versus buying spot Bitcoin. That's one potential reason why we could see these unlocks having a bit of a negative effect. I think we also see a bit of shorting by institutions. Of course, a lot of manipulation going on. I read an article, I think 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, from Guggenheim, the prolific market manipulators. These guys who were saying that Bitcoin's going to $600,000 when Bitcoin was at the top are now saying that Bitcoin's going to $10,000. So these guys put out that article saying, oh yeah, Bitcoin's going down to $10,000 right before this GBTC unlock. Are they shorting the market? Probably. Again, there's no spot selling, so realistically, this shouldn't have a dramatic impact on the market. But if we backdate Grayscale Bitcoin Trust unlocks, they have coincided more often than not, in fact, most of the time, with price downturns. Now you can say, well, that's just a crazy coincidence that like 9 out of the last 10 big Grayscale unlocks have coincided with price corrections, with downturns in the market short term. Maybe this time is the fake out. Maybe they all know we're watching this. The market manipulators are, trying to fake us out, and they're going to pump the markets like crazy. We also have to keep in mind who's getting that Bitcoin ARK, for example. They're very bullish on Bitcoin. They actually want to turn their GBTC Bitcoin into an ETF at some point. They're going for a Bitcoin ETF. So is Grayscale. We're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But I just want you to be aware over the next few days that this is going on. So if you see the prices being a bit meh, or we see some sell-offs happening, I just want you to keep in mind that this is a potential catalyst here, and that if it is because of this, if it is because of this, right, maybe it's just correlation and not causation, but if it is because of this, then the biggest sell-off day is on the 18th of July, when around 16,000 Bitcoin worth of GBT shares will be unlocked, followed up by July 20th, when we have around 10,000 shares of GBT shares being unlocked. After that, basically clear skies. We do have a small unlock on the 22nd of around 4,000 Bitcoin. But after that, it's basically nothing. So this is the last big hurdle in terms of Grayscale Bitcoin unlocks, if, of course, that is something that is defining the markets at the moment. But history would seem to indicate that certainly has some strange coincidences going on if it is not a major catalyst. By the way, it's interesting to keep in mind, too, that Grayscale, they want to transition the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust into an ETF. Now, Grayscale, they do have a application in with the SEC, along with 12 other companies. So there's 13 companies in total now, with Grayscale, with Van Eck, Morgan Stanley, New York Digital Investment Group, Fidelity Investments, ARK Investments, all these guys trying to get a Bitcoin ETF. But Grayscale, they are also going for a Bitcoin ETF, and their plan is to transition the Bitcoin Trust into a Bitcoin ETF. Interesting, of course, to consider that the trust is currently trading at a discount to spot price Bitcoin, and that if they do get their ETF approved in the not so distant future, you would essentially be buying Bitcoin at a discount to the market price. Interesting to keep in mind anyway. And last bit of news for today, just real quick, let's talk about inflation. U.S. consumer prices post sharpest inflation rise since 2008. Inflation's here, inflation's getting worse. Of course it's here. We've been talking about this really since forever on the channel, but particularly since we saw all of the big COVID stimulus packages and stuff like that coming in last year, where the market's just getting flooded with money. They're giving money to everybody, throwing money everywhere. Inflation, it's a big deal. Stanley Druckenmiller was talking about it. I think we covered that maybe 9 months ago on the channel, where he said we could see inflation over the next couple of years in the USA 5 to 10%, maybe more, he said. And what are we getting now? Soaring inflation rates. Every month keeps going up, dramatically so. Last month was also one of the biggest months in years. Now here we go, another one. So it's pretty incredible to see this inflation happening. And it's just going to continue. There's no end in sight to this great inflationary moment that we're seeing for fiat currencies right now. So, it's something pretty incredible that's happening. Look, here's a visualization for you in case you need to understand the effects of inflation versus Bitcoin. You can see in the top here, this is what happens to your purchasing power with your dollars over time. So this is $20 worth of groceries back in the 90s and the early 2000s and the 2010s. And of course, now, don't know why Trump's on this $20 bill. But anyway, main idea is that over time, your fiat becomes worth less and less. That same dollar value buys less and less. I remember I did one time, you can actually go and do this too. There's an inflation calculator online. I put in the year that I was born. If my dad had put $10,000 under his mattress for me and he gave it to me, let's say today, that $10,000 would buy like 60 or 70% less than it would have bought back then. That's how much inflation has robbed wealth within my lifetime. And the US dollar is a strong currency, right? Meanwhile, Bitcoin's running a different narrative. This is if you bought one Bitcoin in 2020. Wouldn't have bought you very much back then. Bitcoin's worth, a couple bucks. And then over time, one Bitcoin becomes worth more and more and more and more. And this is the idea of an inflation hedge. And people think, well, hey, if this is an inflation hedge or if this is a way to escape the dollars, why does it go up and down so much? You know, some hedge, Lark, it's down like 50% right now, man. Come on. Yeah, it is. You know, and the price of gold fluctuates too. And that hasn't changed the narrative or the reality that over time, gold has also been an inflation hedge. These assets change their dollar value. Welcome to reality. But guess what? One Bitcoin is still worth one Bitcoin. It's powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff when you understand it. And that's the truth. That is the truth. Right now, if you're buying Bitcoin, or if you bought Bitcoin higher and you're still holding on to it, here's what you need to keep in mind. Bitcoin is a great inflation hedge. Bitcoin is gold 2.0. Bitcoin is a store of value, a digital store of value. And the price fluctuations are a reality of buying an asset that is still in price discovery mode. Bitcoin's probably going to go up to like a $10 trillion market cap over this decade. Buying it now is buying it before that happens. By the time Bitcoin gets to a $10 trillion market cap, it's going to get pretty boring at that point. It's, you know, we're not going to see probably these 50, 60, 70, 80% downturns. It'll become a lot more stable the bigger the market cap becomes. But right now, we're still in price discovery, and that's an advantage for those who know how to take advantage of it. Anyway, those, of course, are just my 2 Satoshis. What do you think? I want to know your opinion on this Grayscale story. Do you think that we're going to see a Bitcoin sell-off in correlation with the Grayscale Bitcoin share unlocks over the next few days? Or big nothing burger, just the whales trying to fake us out and Bitcoin's going to pump like crazy? Let me know down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching today's video, and peace out till next time.